like I think the kind of the image of the creative consultant is.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, there's another way to go about it is a creative consultant in many ways is kind of like a glorified, and not to be, there are guys who are better than this, but a lot of times you start off as a creative consultant as kind of a glorified gopher that you bounce some ideas off of and then you kind of go make it happen, and then you work your way up to something. But you know, some of the really smartest, greatest guys in our business, they'll spend a little period of time doing it, then they'll go do something else because it's not really a full-on career unto itself. The guys who are really smart, I think, are, you take a look at Objective Productions. They're the ones that do Darren Brown's show, and they do a lot of stuff in Britain, not just magic stuff. They have a magic background, they get magic, and they were able to work with Darren Brown, and coming from their own experience as magicians and magic creators, create a very great experience kind of thing. And think of yourself not as a consultant, maybe you want to be a producer. You know, maybe if you don't want to be on the guy on stage, then you really got to think about what can you bring to the person who wants to be on the stage besides just here's another way to do the trick. Because the tricks are easy. The hard part is personality. The hard part's charisma. The hard part is storytelling and presenting something different.
Some of the education or skills that these top magicians that you were naming have in common, you know, for the folks that are looking at one of the shows.
So the question was, are there any qualities or education or skill that these top magicians have in common? I would say that if you take a look at, let's say, Teller, Copperfield, and Doug Henning, there's a big theater arts background. These are guys that maybe didn't necessarily major in it, but these are guys who really understood theater and studied theater for the sake of theater unto itself, which was helpful. And sometimes a unique skill that would seem irrelevant can play into it. You know, Roy, Siegfried and Roy loved exotic animals, and Siegfried was a magician who loved just classic kind of magic, and the two together worked out well. A very important skill, I think, if you have to know who you are. You have to have a very clear idea who you are, and that can evolve, but you have to say, this is me, this is not me. This is why, you know, top magicians may do similar tricks to somebody else, but they're never going to copy a presentation. You know, David Copperfield and Penn and Teller are not going to use the same dialogue, the same lines, or the same anything like that. Darren Brown, you know, and that's because they have a very clear idea on who their identity is. So if there's any skill, I think it's having that ability to step back and to see what you are. It's very important to see what you are. And Chris Kenner talks a lot about this. And the problem is a lot of magicians, you know, he sees more tapes than anybody of magicians trying to dress up like David Copperfield, but, you know, probably look more like Ricky Jay. And, you know, Ricky Jay does a fantastic job of being Ricky Jay, and Ricky Jay can go do a Broadway show, can get critical acclaim, and doing a totally different kind of magic from that. So the most important thing is, I think, appreciation of theater, how things work from a theatrical point of view, and character, and understanding those elements. And those are things you can study, and those are things you can read books on, and those are things you can go do classes and workshops on and talk to people. But you have to know to ask the questions. Yes, sir.
Last question.
Oh, what if I have questions? We're going to be here all night. Oh, it's 3 hours. Wow.
Yeah, not bad.
All right.
Not
People,
bad.
anybody still watching?
Are you kidding? There's like 1,000 people out there. All right, maybe not quite. But there were earlier. Now.
Yeah, there were.
All right. So earlier you said that you don't like to use your brain and you're a lazy magician and stuff, and we all know that's not true. But when you are tasked with creating a solution or finding a solution or solving a problem, etc., for a trick, can you describe your creative process? Is the first thing you do go back and look at what people have done? Is the first thing you do look at your stage illusion training? Is it, oh, I gotta go to a science book? Yeah, you know, there's a problem a lot of times young magicians who want to be creative do is, and you notice, like, sometimes, like we talk about the blink thing, you do a card thing, you blink because you don't want to acknowledge that it's happening. In creative, sometimes we do this when we're young, is we start off and we don't want to pay attention to what's been done before because we're afraid to find out that we're not that original. And once you get over that and you realize that, yeah, maybe it's been done before, and you start to have a better idea what's been done out there, or at least you know how to acknowledge and credit and be aware of that and try to be mindful of that, you can then really start to be creative, and then you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You can reinvent the wheel too if you want. That'd be really hard. So I think that, you know, I guess, what was the question again? So the question was, what is your creative process?
So my process, all right. Well, these people are dying back here.
How does the trick go from sort of idea to execution?
So, okay, so what I do is like I said, like if chances are if somebody's thought of it, in my point of view, they probably thought of it better. And so I want to go find that, and maybe I might be able to come in with a new direction. Sometimes you find out you can't find it anywhere, and then you find out years later, but my process is either I say, I'm going to use this principle, or I have to find a method. And I was very lucky. When I was about 15 years old, I went to go see David Copperfield perform, and I found out that Don Wayne was there. And Don Wayne was a creator for David for a number of years, helped David create some of his greatest magic. And I got to talk to Don Wayne after the show. And Don Wayne patiently waited for me. We sat on the loading dock, and I brought my little booklets of illusion designs. And I had a lot of elaborate methods. I had a lot of like, oh, this girl floats out of the box here and does this, and Don's like, you have a base, why don't you use black art? And he was like, why don't you use this simpler thing? I'm like, I don't know. And then I realized that from him, go for the simplest thing and then figure out how to make it better. And so for me, you can do any trick. It's anything you can conceive of can be done. It's when you start putting in these qualifiers, has to be done with two eyes open, has to be done surrounded. No, you can't give your audience hallucinogenics, and you start to do these, you start to narrow down the possibilities of what can be done, but start with a wide open canvas and then think about the situation you're going to be in and look around for everything. I like to look for solutions that somebody else has thought of, and it might even be in magic because it's easier that way, and they've sometimes done a lot more research on it. So start with, the obvious way to do it and then make it less obvious. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Can we get a big round of applause?
Yes. All right. All right. Oh, sit down. Sit down, everybody. Please, sit down. Sit down already, all right?
So, no, really, I mean, you have created a phenomenal body of work. And
Thank you.
To have you.
And I'm only 14, just wait.
I know, look at this face. All right, thank you all. Thank you for supporting Live.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you
for joining us. And
who do you have next week?
I think we have Daniel Garcia.
Or Piff?
No, Piff the Magic Dragon. Yeah. That's right, Piff the Magic Dragon, 24th.
You're getting some of the, I mean, guys, the education you're getting here is fantastic. And these are people that I look at and go, man, there's so much to learn from. And so you're doing a great thing. You guys are all doing a fantastic thing. And I'm done. I don't have to be saying this, okay? But I really think what you're doing, and a round of applause to you guys for putting this on. And then, I mean, look, you had Dan Harlan last week and Piff, and that's, you had a slow week with me, but I was very excited to see that. And I think that the thing is like, magic overload, but in a good way. That kind of exposure is awesome. I mean, it's awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's not a short trip from sunny Fort Lauderdale to Columbus, Ohio, and nor is it, the most.
I walked.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks again. Big round of applause again, please, for.